this afternoon. Since this is a training, all cameras and microphones are turned off. If you have a question throughout the training, just be sure to raise your hand using that feature at the top of your screen. However, we will open the floor at the end of the training for questions, but you can always drop your question in the chat as well. Following the training, we will be sending out an email with the recording of the training, all of the training materials, as well as professional standards information and the survey code. And we will also be putting these materials on Teach All for you. I think that's it from me. So I am going to hand it off to our presenter today, Randa.
Good afternoon, everyone. I will also be keeping an eye on the chat as we go through. So if you do have questions, I can try to answer those as we go. If not, we can answer them at the end, like Lexi said. I'm Randa Mead. I'm the Senior Compliance and Data Manager for the School Nutrition Program, and we're going to talk about the Seamless Summer option today. We are just focusing on a high-level overview of SSO. We will be doing a follow-up training on April 1st for rural non-congregate specifically. So there's one small blip in here about rural non-congregate in your TMAC app, but otherwise we'll have another training so that this one isn't too long. So just to start off with this disclaimer regarding generative AI tools, the state of Tennessee does not permit the use of generative AI such as Otter in meetings that are hosted on state resources. Generative AI tools are not adequately regulated and are designed to train on data that is collected, and it may represent data or release protected information to the general public. Please know that if you are utilizing one of these, it will be removed from the meeting. So to start off, our mission statement for school nutrition is to develop extraordinary school nutrition professionals and increase strategies and provide strategies to increase consumption of healthy school meals. Today's agenda is to review summer feeding requirements and discuss the Seamless Summer option application process. So let's dive right into some SSO requirements. So what is SSO? SSO is a streamlined option for providing summer meals by continuing to follow several of the same operational requirements, such as the National School Lunch Program, School Breakfast Program meal patterns, and procedures for filing claims and determining student eligibility. Sorry about that. So the similarities between NSLP and SSO, we follow the same meal patterns as NSLP and school breakfast. You must meet the vegetable subgroup requirements and must meet the minimum serving amounts for all requirements. We'll go into some more depth on what those meal patterns look like later. You must keep accurate production records. You must maintain calories, sodium, and fat limitations. You must create and follow HACCP plans. And I do want to make a note that HACCP plans is one of our most common SSO findings. So you'll want to make sure when implementing SSO that you have that HACCP plan in place for all of your sites and that they're being followed correctly. Only meals served to children can be claimed for reimbursement. So we're not basing our claims on the number of prepared or the number of leftovers. It's making sure that the child receives a meal so that we can claim it for reimbursement. You must keep accurate meal counts. And unless you are approved to operate a non-congregate model, meals must be consumed on site in a congregate setting. So a high-level overview of SSO. We have us as a state agency, you, the SFA, are the sponsor, and then we have sites. And the sites are where you actually feed the kids or distribute meals if you're operating non-congregate. So as a state agency, we recruit sponsors and publicize sites. We provide training and technical assistance, which is what we're doing now. We monitor sites and we process claims and distribute reimbursement to sponsors. You, as the sponsor, recruit sites and provide them with training and technical assistance. You monitor sites. You report meal counts and submit claims for reimbursement to the state agency, and you conduct outreach to families and the community. For our actual sites, that's where we feed and then, of course, provide supervision to the kids who are there. The sites are responsible for keeping accurate counts of the number of kids who are served a meal, maintaining a safe environment, and conducting outreach to draw kids to the sites. So, SSO site, I want to dive into this a little bit more deeply because I've heard some conflicting information out there that's been going on. So, I want to make sure that we're all clear on what an SSO site is. The site is where the food is consumed by the child and where the meal counts are taken. This could also be where the meal is distributed if you're operating a non congregate model. Sites are not where the food is prepared. So you're able to have a centralized kitchen and send meals out to multiple different sites. But each one of those sites where the food is being consumed or distributed must be a site in TMAC and meet all program requirements. So I want to make sure that we're clear on that. Your centralized kitchen is not your only site that feeds multiple places where meal counts are taken or where the food is actually served. So the site is actually where the food is consumed. So for site types and reimbursement, we have open or open restricted, closed enrolled, camp, and migrant sites. For open and open restricted sites, meals are served on a first come, first served basis. It serves all children age 18 and under. All reimbursable meals served receive the free school breakfast program and national school lunch program free reimbursement rates, and the site must be area eligible. For closed enrolled sites, it serves only an identified or enrolled group of children through age 18 who are participating in a specific group or activity. The site can be area eligible, or 50% of those enrolled students can be eligible for free or reduced price meals. All reimbursable meals served receive the school breakfast program and national school lunch program free reimbursement rates. Academic Center School is not a closed enrolled site. Camps and migrants, we don't see a lot of those, but camps are, think of like a 4-H camp, an overnight camp where you have all day long activities available for children. You can't use area eligibility for those sites, and meals are served based on individual student eligibility. Migrant sites serve primarily migrant population and families through age 18. Open restricted sites do follow the same requirements as open sites, but may be limited due to safety or security reasons. But really, the expectation, even with an open restricted site, is that meals are made available to the entire community. All right, now let's discuss area eligibility.
Hey, Randa,
So,
I'm sorry to interrupt you. Can you hear me?
yeah, yeah, I can
I
hear you.
got a message or two saying that some folks weren't able to view your screen. So I just want to let those folks know I can see it on your end, and I think it's okay, Randa. But
Okay.
if the folks who still can't see your screen, click that view button at the top next to the React smiley face, and they click focus on content. That should be able to fix their view. I also got some messages that if you leave the meeting and join back, you'll be able to see it. Sorry about that.
No problem. Thanks for that update. Um, okay, so let's talk about some area eligibility information. So site must be located, this is talking about open and open, restricted open, and closed enrolled, because that's really the majority of what we have. So those sites must be located in an area in which poor economic conditions exist. So what does that mean and how do we determine it? We have two options, and that's school level data or census data. So I've expanded on these a little bit on these slides from what we've had in the prior year, but the information and the requirements are the same. So for school level data, the site must be located in an attendance area of a school where at least 50% of the enrolled students are eligible for free or reduced price meals. So the specific address, the site address, does not have to be a site that has at least 50% of enrolled students eligible for free or reduced price meals. The site could be a park near an elementary school with at least 50% free and reduced eligibility at that specific school. Another example of this is the site could be a high school that has less than 50% free and reduced eligibility, but an elementary or middle school that feeds into that high school has at least 50% free and reduced eligibility. So when we are using school level data, we're really looking at the overall attendance area of a school, and anything in that geographic attendance area, if the school's at least 50% free and reduced eligible, can be qualified by them. Sites participating in CEP must use the individual site's free claim percentage, which is the ISP, the individual student percentage at that specific site, times the 1.6 multiplier, and not the group's free claim percentage. So that does mean that we have some sites that are participating in CEP where maybe their overall group claim percentage is above 50%, but the individual claiming percentage is not at the 50% threshold. And then that site on its own would not be eligible based on the individual claiming percentage. So we also have census data. And when it comes to census data, it's different from our school data because the specific site or address has to be in a place where at least 50% of children are eligible for free or reduced price meals. We also have the option to use a weighted average of up to 3 adjacent census blocks. In order to use any block, it has to have at least 40% of children eligible. And again, that specific site address must be located in a qualifying census block. So I know this can get a little confusing because with school data, we have the ability to use those attendance areas, and that exact address does not have to meet the 50%. But when we're using census data, that's the only option we have available. The specific address must be eligible. And Lexi's going to throw some links in the chat, but I wanted to show you the area eligibility map. And this is for the USDA census map. It's always a good idea to click on full size map. And they've actually changed the look of the map this year, which is one of the reasons I wanted to talk about it. So previously, the map was red and blue. I thought was a little confusing. Now it is green and gray. So green, if the census block is green, it is eligible. So I'm going to search for the address of our office downtown. And you'll see, oh, that specific area is gray. So it would not be eligible. And when I click on it, it brings up the information about this specific census block. So it looks like, according to this, there are no kids that are eligible for free and reduced price meals in this block. So since all of these are 0, I would not be able to average this with any of the green ones around it. But if I wanted to go across the street over here and have a site, I could because it's green and it's eligible. So this gives you the breakdown of the number of students that are eligible in the blocks. And then this also includes what's called a GEO ID. And if you're using census data to qualify a site, I'll show you what that looks like in your TMAC app in a little bit. But this is how you break down that GEO ID. So here there's a multi-digit number, and then this tells you that the first 2 characters are a state code, the next 3 are a county code, then you have your census tract code and your block group code. So all of those are what actually goes into your TMAC application so that we know what census data you're using. We'll come back to that when we talk about TMAC apps. But since we're on the map, I did want to show that to you. Like I said, we're not really discussing rural, but the No Kid Hungry map includes rural. So before I show you a map with all these different pieces included, I did just want to highlight the rural map. I also wanted to highlight it in the general SSO training because when this map first came out, it was very unfavorable to our state. And we now have a lot more favorability when it comes to what USDA is considering rural. So you'll see the vast majority of the state is rural. We have some non-rural pockets in what we typically think of as their more metro areas. And then we have a little bit up here in the Tri-Cities, Morristown as well. USDA does have the ability to do rural pocket requests where they say they will approve a site if it serves a rural population that is not green on this map. I've had very little success with getting those approved. I'm open to trying again, but if you are interested in doing rural non-congregate, I highly, highly, highly encourage you to try to find a place that is green on the map to make it work. We'll talk about this more on the April 1st training, but did just want to show you that the map is much more favorable to us than what it once was, in case you were still thinking it was that first horrible map. That was not nice. Okay, then we have the No Kid Hungry map, which takes a lot of data and puts it into one. So here's the average eligibility map. You have to click like 4 times to actually get to the map. It would help if I clicked the correct link. All right. Here there are gray is not eligible, orange is eligible, and blue is the averaged eligible that I was talking about. So again, I'm going to zoom in and get a little bit closer. And then I'm going to search again for the office address downtown. And you will see here that it is still gray because it is not eligible. I'm going to zoom out a little bit. And you'll see here is a blue one. So this means on its own, this census block is not eligible, but it is using the data around it to do a weighted average and make it eligible. And then it gives you the breakdown of the information here. So that's census data. and how to put it in a TMAC app. And I'll come back, like I said, to the TMAC. Okay, so let's continue on with area eligibility and using census data. Here are the links that we just talked about and information I covered on the maps. For the USDA map, green is eligible, gray is not. No Kid Hungry, orange is eligible, blue is eligible, gray is not eligible. Great. Now let's talk about the meal counting. So meal counts with SSO must be taken at the point of service, just like NSLP. Meal counts must contain, or meals must contain all required components or items. Only one reimbursable meal can be served per child per meal service. You can utilize your typical point of sale systems for meals served in schools, or you have the option to utilize meal count forms for provisional schools, which are linked here. That form does include a written report of a clicker. I would say if you're doing one of those, tally sheets are definitely preferable to clickers, but clickers are still allowed. It's just they're a little more challenging to keep up with from a compliance standpoint. So for on-site monitoring, each site must be monitored once within operation. At minimum, you must review the site's compliance with meal counting, claiming, menu planning, and food safety requirements. We've linked an on-site monitoring form here. This is another area of a common finding we see on our SSO reviews. So you want to make sure that you're doing your on-site monitoring. And even if the site is only operating one day, it still has to be monitored. For administrative reviews, if the SFA operates SSO the summer following your administrative review year, the SSO program will also be reviewed. SFAs operating traditional congregate feeding sites will have one site reviewed, and SFAs operating non-congregate feeding sites will have one non-congregate and one congregate site reviewed. That's assuming that you're operating both a congregate and a non-congregate. If you're only operating a non-congregate or non-congregate sites, then you would only have non-congregate reviewed. Okay, so now let's talk about the meal pattern. So for breakfast, we have the required food components of fruit, which we can also serve vegetables, fluid milk, grains, which we also know meat alternates can be included. Here is your daily and weekly requirements for the meal pattern for the different grades, grades K through 5, 6 through 8, and 9, 12. As a reminder, 80% of your grains must be whole grain rich. And for fruit, you cannot exceed half of your weekly total as juice. For fluid milk, you can serve low fat and fat free, unflavored, or flavored. And you do need to have an option there. Here are our dietary specifications as a reminder. I'm not going to spend a lot of time digging into these requirements, but I do just want you all to remember that it is the same meal pattern that we use for lunch and breakfast during the regular school year. For offer versus serve at breakfast, offer versus serve is always optional for SSO operations for all age and grade groups. The offered menu, if you're implementing offer versus serve, must contain 4 food items from the 3 food component in the minimum daily required amount for each component. Students in any grade must select at least 3 food items. And if selected, the grains and milk must be in the full daily minimum amount. One of the food items must be at least half a cup of fruit or juice. As a reminder, a food item is a specific food offered within a required component. Some food items may actually count as multiple food items at breakfast. For example, a 2 ounce equivalent biscuit can count as either one or two food items, and it's up to the menu planner to decide how exactly that works. So, if the 2 ounce equivalent biscuit counts as one food item, the student must select two additional food items, with one of those additional items being a fruit or vegetable. If the 2 ounce equivalent biscuit is credited and counted as two food items, the student would only need one additional food item. However, it must be a fruit or vegetable. USDA did not make it simple when they came up with how to implement our meal pattern. That is for sure. All right, so what about lunch? For lunch, we have 5 required food components. We have fruit, fluid milk, grains, vegetables, and meat alternates. Here is the overview of the National School Lunch Meal Pattern and how much you are required to provide daily and weekly by age grade group. Again, for fluid milk, you can have low fat and fat free, flavored, or unflavored. For fruit, for K8, the minimum daily requirement is half a cup. And for grades 9 through 12, it is 1 cup. For vegetables, you do have to meet the subgroup requirements, which we have on the next slide. And for vegetables, the component size is 3/4 of a cup for K8 and 1 cup for 9-12. This 3/4 cup vegetable requirement is very important to remember if you are not doing offer versus serve for lunch for the smaller kiddos. You have to make sure that you're providing that 3/4 cup or you're not meeting the meal pattern requirements. For grains, at least 80% of your grains must be whole grain rich. And then we also have meat and meat alternates. For vegetable subgroups, there are no daily minimum requirements for the subgroups. We do have weekly requirements for our subgroups. If you're serving more or less than 5 days a week, these amounts do change. And I don't have the link handy for this general SSO training because we don't typically see that in regular SSO. It's more of a non-congregate thing where we're serving more than 5 days. So we have dark green, red, orange, beans, peas, and legumes, now lentils, starchy, other, and then also additional vegetables. Here are our dietary specifications for lunch. And then for offer versus serve at lunch, offer versus serve again is always optional for SSO operation for all age grade groups. That is one difference. If you're targeting the 9-12 age grade group with SSO, you are not required to implement offer versus serve. Though if you're not doing offer versus serve, again, for the K8 group, you have to make sure you're providing that 3/4 cup vegetable. And for 9-12, you would have to make sure each meal contains the full cup of vegetable and the full cup of fruit. If you are implementing offer versus serve, this child must select at least 3 of the 5 food components, and one of those 3 components must be at least half a cup of fruit and or vegetable. So again, we have fruit, fluid milk, grains, vegetables, and meat alternates. Okay, so now for a definition check/review. A food component is one of the required food groups at breakfast or lunch. A food item is a specific food offered within a required component, and food choices are when students are offered more than one food item within a food component to choose from. For your combination of meals that you're allowed to serve with SSO, you can serve up to meals per child per day in any of the following combinations except for lunch and supper. So you can have breakfast and lunch, breakfast and snack, breakfast and supper, lunch and snack, or snack and supper. Okay. I don't see any questions yet, so we will talk about the SSO application process now. Okay, so the first thing is if you're adding a new site, you create a site number, and I'm going to talk about these, and then I'm going to show what they look like in TMAC, which is kind of the opposite of what I've done in prior years. So the site number must be 4 characters. If you're operating at a school, you use the same site number. If you cannot choose the same site number as your NSLP school, you can reach out to Latrice and she can get that adjusted for you. If you're not operating at a school, you might want to start the site with an S to indicate that it is a summer site. That is not a requirement, just something that I've seen. If you're operating non-congregate, though, the site number must start with NC, such as NC01. If you're starting a new site, I did this in our test site, but I had to choose a SFA, so that's why you see Morgan County there. This is what it looks like when you go to add a new site. So I have the site number I can put here, and then I'm going to name the site. If it's only SSO, you would click just the SSO button. So then we have your Seamless Summer Option Program contact. That's who is at the SFA or organizational level. And that's what is listed on summer feeding maps as the site contact, along with that person's contact information. The street address is the address where the summer feeding site is located and is published to the USDA site finder if it's an open site. I did want to let you all know that No Kid Hungry is no longer doing a map of the active summer feeding sites. They used the same data that we send to USDA to create their map. So they're just pointing to the USDA now to be used for the site finder. And this is what that area looks like in TMAC. Again, you're going to put that first and last name, the email address, and you'll put the address where the site is located. It cannot be a PO box. So then we have the period of operation, the organizational liaison, and your monitoring plan. For the period of operation, you're going to select no for a year-round school operation. You need to provide a specific start and end date for the operations at this site. Your operation days each month, you're going to enter the number of days the site will operate. This number must be equal to or greater than the number of operating days in your claim in TMAC. So what this means is when you file a claim in TMAC, if you have that you operated 15 days in June, you can't file a claim in TMAC that says you operated 16 days. It's not going to let you do that. But you can put a site application for 15 days in your site app, and then maybe something happens that you only operate 14. You're not going to run into an issue with that part of your TMAC claim. The organization liaison is the person at the site level, if they're different from the Seamless Summer contact, who is responsible for the program. It might be the site supervisor or the liaison between the site supervisor and the SFA. You're also going to provide us your monitoring plan. So you just tell us what you're going to do to monitor those site operations. each site must be monitored once during operation, again, even if it only operates for one day. And here's what that portion of the application packet looks like. Again, there's a start and the end date here. You click this little button and a calendar pops up, and then you put in the number of days the site will operate each month. This relates later when you click the number or you click the days that you'll operate. It would be really nice if they were together and flowed a little bit better in your application, but that is unfortunately out of our control. So, site type, open and closed site. I'm actually going to skip over this and come back because I want to show this part. Number 16, this is what I was talking about when you check the number or the actual days that you're going to operate. This needs to relate back to those number of operating days. So if you say that you're going to operate on Monday and you're operating the full month of, let's say, June, we would expect to see all of those Mondays included in the number of operating days that you have. And this is also where you put your meal service times. Now let's talk about site types, open and closed sites. So when you're going through your TMAC app, the next thing you will see is you're going to choose the type of site. So if it's open, again, it has to be located in an area eligible spot and available to all children through age 18 in the community. If it's restricted open, it again has to be eligible. And you tell us why you're limiting the attendance or why it's restricted due to safety or security. As a reminder, the expectation is even with a restricted open site, it is still open to all children through age 18. For a closed enrolled site, you it can be located in an eligible or non-eligible area. Again, if it's not eligible, you have to have those 50% of the students enrolled eligible for free or reduced price meals, and you'll tell us how you will determine that 50% of them are eligible if that's the route you're going. And then you'll also tell us why you're sponsoring a closed site. Okay, eligibility, qualifications. So this is the next part. For open, restricted, open, and closed enrolled, you're going to tell us how the site was qualified. So if you're using your own school data, this little drop down box will have all of the sites within your application packet that had 50% free and reduced eligibility from the prior March. So you select that and you're good to go. We do have some SFAs that use data from other SFAs to qualify their sites. This could be if it's like a city county situation, or we have some counties with multiple special school districts. If one is kind of covering the other area, you can put in their information and you would put in their SFA agreement number and their site number. For the census data, this is where you put the tract number and the block number if you're using census data. So if we go back to our census information, we need the tract number and the block number. So we basically ignore these first 5 numbers, and then you put 1, 2, 3, these 6 numbers in green for the tract, and then this last number for the block group into your TMAC application. That's how that part works. If you're doing a closed enrolled site and doing income eligibility forms, you will say whether they're on file or if they're being collected. and then for the specific site, and then how many children are enrolled and how many will be eligible for free or reduced price meals. For migrant and campsites, again, we don't have a lot of these that are happening, but this is what the application looks like if you are implementing one of these sites. I'm not going to go into grave detail because, again, I don't think we have any of those sites actually operating. So back to the age, grade group, and meal participation. For closed enrolled sites, when you're looking at your age grade group, you know the enrollment because it is a site for a specific group of students. So that means you must follow the meal pattern for the group of students who are there and enrolled in that site. For open sites for your age grade group, you put the grade group that you're targeting. So if you have an open site and it's at a library when it's time for like the little kiddos to be there for like story time, you would do the K-5 meal pattern. If you're targeting something where you know that there's going to be older students and you think that it might be more high school, you would select to serve the high school 9-12 meal pattern. For meal types, again, you select up to the 2 allowable meals to be served. For the estimated number to be served, this is the maximum that you expect to serve, and it's okay to overestimate in this area. For the meal service times, you enter in the days and times that the meal service will occur. And the information in this section is submitted to the site finder tools for the community, and only open sites appear on the site finder. So if you say that you're serving on Monday from June 1st to June 30th, that implies that you're serving all of the Mondays within that month. There are AM and PM snacks, and so you would, if you're doing one of those, you would do which one is the most applicable. Breakfast must be served in the morning, and lunch must be served between 10 and 2. Unless you're doing non-congregate, these site times cannot have any overlap. Okay, non-congregate meal service. This is a section that is in your application. Again, we're going to have a whole separate training on non-congregate, but I did want to just include it because it is part of the site app. So if you're not doing non-congregate, you select no, you move on with your life. If you are doing non-congregate, then you select either yes or both, and I have information on the next slides about what that looks like. So you would select yes if you're doing rural non-congregate, or if you're doing emergency feeding meals or meals for an unanticipated school closure via SSO and you're doing them non-congregate. No is if you plan to provide only congregate meals. And then both is used for non-congregate meals for an excessive heat waiver, which is not currently available, but it is still included in the site app. If you're doing a traditional feeding site that is serving congregate meals for a specific number of days, but also providing additional non-congregate meals, and in that example, you would have to meet the rural non-congregate classifications. Question. Can you clarify, for estimated number to be served, is the maximum for each day, all days of the week, or is it the maximum number to be served for the month? That would be, I think it's per day. if I'm remembering how it works correctly. Or so yeah, it would be the number of meals that you would serve per day that you're expecting. Good question. The next part of the application is meal planning and service. So it asks if you're going to do offer versus serve. Um, there's also a section for excessive heat days, but I'm thinking that might have came out with the non-congregate piece being added. So I'm sorry if I didn't remove that correctly. And then for advertising, if it's an open or restricted open site or a migrant site, it must be advertised to the public and it must include the non-discrimination statement on your advertising. And here's what that area looks like. You tell us if meals are prepared on this site, if they're transported to this site. So if you have a central kitchen that's taking meals out to multiple places, you would say, no, meals are not prepared at this site and they're transported here. That just helps us understand how you're going to be operating the program. Then the last part of your site application is that you are certifying that you are agreeing with everything that you're putting in this application. You click certify and then you move on to either your next site or you would submit your sponsor or SFA application packet to be reviewed by your regional consultant. Now here is the survey to provide some feedback for today's training. You can use your phone's camera to scan the QR code, and Lexi also just put the actual link into the chat. So I'll leave that there for a second and open it up to questions before I go to my contact information. So I think most of y'all have my contact information, but we'll still show it at the end just in case. Here is my contact information. As a reminder, we will be doing another training for rural non-congregate on April 1st. Lexi just put, Lexi, you're so on top of things. I was about to say Lexi's going to put it in the chat, but there it is as I'm speaking. So you're doing an awesome, awesome job. Lexi put the link there in the chat. It will also be included in the bi-monthly update and it will be included in our recap of this training, and all the other links that we dropped throughout the training will be included in that recap as well. I'm not seeing any questions, so I think that concludes our session for today. If you do have any questions and think of them after the fact, feel free to reach out to me or your regional consultant, and we would all be more than happy to help you. Lexi, I'll turn it back over to you.
Thanks, Randa. Great training. I don't think we have anything else. As Randa said, tune in for the additional training on April 1st. And again, all that follow-up information will be headed out to you all shortly. Thanks for taking the time to join us this afternoon. Bye, everybody.